afternoon, everyone. Welcome along to our webinar today. Len Day's my name, and on behalf of my team at Austar, we'd like to thank you all for joining us. Now, we've got some regulars, I assume, that are here and have been part of the format that we've been following over the last 6 months now. But we'd also have some new people that have joined us, and I'd like to thank you for coming on board today. Just so that you understand our format, we normally have 2 weeks apart webinars, and they are an alternation between people, topics and people that are talking about real estate, but also about topics that I think are very relative to our community and have quite a lot of humanitarian perspective to it as well. So, and obviously today's speaker is from that topic, and it's with real great pleasure that I welcome Nick Loosley along this afternoon. So welcome, Nick. I have to say, Nick, before you speak, I've been really, really excited for a week or so now. I haven't met you, and I hadn't heard of you until you offered your services as a speaker. But the more I read about you and the more I find out about you, the more I couldn't wait to have this conversation today. So thank you very, very much for coming along and giving up your time for us today. Nick, before we talk about Everybody Eats, can we talk a little bit about you? I want to hear the life journey that you've had today, up to date, if you want, but start with where you grew up and how that all came about.
Sure. Hey, thank you for having me. Good to be here. I'll start off with my current journey, which is I have COVID, so I'm sorry if I'm slightly croaky. I'm feeling fine. It's about day 7, but just wanted to give you that as a little bit of a reason why my voice might not be quite as sharp as it could and should be. So yeah, my name's Nick Loosley. I'm the founder and general manager of Everybody Eats. We're a charity here in Auckland and Wellington trying to create change with food. My journey is basically starts in Auckland. I grew up in Auckland. I went to private schools. I'm a product of King's Prep and King's College. For anyone who knows Auckland, they'll know that those are schools of, by this country's standards, extreme privilege. And I make no mistake about that. I'm very aware of where I come from. And I think the reason I say that is because I think it's really, really important for what I do now. And when I reflect on where I come from, it starts to make sense with the work that I do now. So I went through school, went through university, got into hospitality and ran restaurants for 4 years or so before realizing that actually there were some issues with restaurants and things that I didn't love about restaurants. So I sort of changed my perspective and got back into sort of learning again. And along the way, I ended up at a small university in England called Schumacher College, which is probably one of the most sort of radical and progressive tertiary institutions in the world. And it was there that I did the research that created Everybody Eats, basically. So I was doing a program there called Economics for Transition, which in a few words is basically how to save the world from humans, is how I like to describe it. And for my research, I went and visited and volunteered at about 12 different organizations around the UK and one in Spain that were trying to do great things with food, trying to create change with food. And 2 of those projects, the Real Junk Food Project and Food Cycle, were both working with what we call surplus or rescued food. So food that is going to go to landfill for various reasons. And when I saw the quality and volume of food that wealthy developed countries like England were that was falling through the cracks, I knew that this was sort of the most critical issue that we had within the food system, which is, a huge system and has a huge impact on us all because we all eat food, and also environmentally. I knew that this was what needed to be, or what at least I wanted to spend my time trying to do something about. So when I got back to New Zealand, I kind of brought together all the different learnings I had from the different projects. and piloted what became Everybody Eats. So we work with surplus food or food that was going to go to landfill, and with the help of amazing volunteers, we transformed that into 3-course restaurant meals that we allow anyone in the community to come and enjoy on what we call a pay-as-you-feel or koha basis. So we feed a lot of people experiencing homelessness, a lot of working poor, but we also feed people that are used to going out to restaurants and want to support our cause.
Nick, so Everybody Eats is a not-for-profit business or organisation, however you want to call it. Is the model the same in the UK that you saw, or you've just adapted it for what you saw as a more usable one in New Zealand, or how did the actual model come around for you?
Yeah, great question. So Everybody Eats' legal structure is a registered charity. I'm sure people know what that means. Obviously, that makes us not for profit. So Everybody Eats is unique in the world in terms of the way we do things and the exact way we do things. There are very similar projects in lots of other countries that are transforming surplus food into restaurant meals. What I wanted to do with Everybody Eats was just elevate that experience and take it from what I'd call a soup kitchen experience, or one that is very much geared towards people in critical need of food, to one that is more like a restaurant experience, and add that layer of dignity and respect that comes from being served at a table in the restaurant. And by providing what we call restaurant quality food, we're able to attract a wide range of people. So it's not like walking into a soup kitchen where inevitably most of the people are in food poverty or are struggling in some way. What I wanted to do, and this is where kind of my background as a privileged rich white kid comes from, is I wanted to see everyone at the table. I didn't want to just see one type of person, because what I learned from going to a school like King's College and traveling the world and seeing people that were different to me is how important that diversity is in breaking down social barriers, removing prejudice, and allowing communities to get on. And I really firmly believe that the only way that we're going to solve social problems is if we all understand each other. And that's what I'm trying to do with Everybody Eats, is provide everyone with the same food and the same experience so that they have common ground to then connect on other levels.
I love that fact that you're aiming for dignity with this, because I've had a little bit of experience working or helping, assisting in those the charities that are just handing food out, and there's not a lot of dignity there, that's for sure. And so I really admire what you're trying to achieve there. And you've probably touched on a little bit in what my next question is about. And so what's your vision for Everybody Eats? What's your bigger picture for it? Is there a clear one there? I'm sure there is.
Yeah, very much so. Look, my ideal scenario would be that food poverty, food waste, and social isolation aren't problems that need to be solved, and there's no need for Everybody Eats to exist. However, those problems aren't going anywhere in this country. In fact, they've gotten worse recently, and COVID obviously has a role to play in that. So we'd like to have Everybody Eats restaurants in all the main centres. That's sort of the mission of the Everybody Eats board. So yeah, we'd like to see at least sort of 5 Everybody Eats restaurants. We've currently got sort of 2.5, you might say, because we still operate the sort of pop-up model, which is not a permanent restaurant. But without COVID, we'd probably have 3 or 4 restaurants. It's just really, really hard for a charity with a very novel concept that's relatively new to grow in a time that's really uncertain. So we've been very close to signing leases. We actually had one pretty much ready to go in Avondale in Auckland in August, and then Delta came and we just put that on ice. So yeah, we'd like to have a presence in all the main centres, and yeah, be part of telling the story of reducing food waste and educating people on that as well.
Well, if you can get that Avondale one going, I'd think some of the Austar team would certainly get behind you there and help help you with that. That's for sure.
Right.
Give us a little bit of an idea of the I guess the size or the vastness of what you've done already. What's your estimate? How many people have you fed, or how many meals have you done, or how much waste have you used, or would have been waste? If you could share that with us, that'd be great.
I think we're at something like 70,000 3-course meals, which translates into something like 50 ton of food. I think we're like, a lot of charities are very data heavy, and we obviously keep all of our data, but actually the impact of Everybody Eats is much better. The story is told much better as a story rather than in numbers, because there are plenty of organizations feeding people and saving lots of food from going to waste. But as you say, and this is not to take away from what they do, they're handing food out, whereas what we're doing is we're creating a really, really meaningful experience. So we can't really measure it, although we do have a University of Otago master's student who is doing a piece of research for us about the social capital that we're building within communities. But yeah, I think as I said, something like 70,000 meals and certainly over 50 ton of what is perfectly good food that has been diverted from landfill.
Well, even if those numbers aren't quite accurate, they're just phenomenal. And congratulations so far. And I know you're probably viewing this as a beginning sort of thing. It's not anywhere near complete sort of vision that you've got there. You touched on it a little bit earlier, and I think for a lot of people, they're not aware enough of what actually is happening out there and a lot of it is caused by COVID now over the last couple of years, but it was already growing anyway. I think in my eyes, COVID has just sped up the whole process, where we have a lot more people now that are needing food and are hungry, which is phenomenal when you think about how much wastage there is in the world that we have, especially in a country as with a standard of living that New Zealand's got, and yet we have so many people hungry. You must be seeing that as well, obviously, with the facilities that you've got. The demand and the amount of people piling in there must be huge at the moment.
Yeah, the demand for us is very hard to measure, because so many people are impacted by COVID in a way that makes them not want to go to places like restaurants. So actually, bizarrely, our numbers have remained fairly steady throughout COVID. And the reason for that is, yes, the need has gone up. So prior to COVID, it was considered that 1 in 6 New Zealanders weren't adequately feeding themselves or able to feed themselves. Now it's 1 in 5. Which is quite a large shift, obviously. So obviously the demand for support in terms of food has increased, but so has the apprehension around going out to public places and commuting. We expect the numbers to go up if and when COVID, I want to say, disappears. One of the things I've certainly noticed in the work I do is the changing face of the communities that are accessing food. So I've been providing a meal on K Road in Auckland for 5 years now. We've been closed there since August because of the government mandates. But I have seen the community change, and the people that are sleeping rough on K Road and around Auckland City change throughout COVID, and the type of person and the behavior of those people has changed. And that's because the type of person and the behavior of people has changed in a really quite scary way. That has a huge impact on me and my kind of understanding of where we're at as a country and as a city. And it's really alarming, like it really is a problem. We were on in my opinion, we were sort of on a certain trajectory, and then we changed governments, and whether that trajectory changed, I'm not sure. And then COVID came along, and it's just this train that's just it's not slowing down. It just keeps going in that direction. And the fuel was probably put on that fire 10 years ago to get that train going, but it's not slowing down.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a big worry. I will say that I think that New Zealand has done, the charitable sector, and to some extent MSD have done a great job of diverting more food, getting more food in the hands of people that need it. There's some amazing projects and initiatives that have come about due to COVID that would never have happened, that needed to happen anyway. So we're doing an okay job. We're doing okay Band-Aid solutions, but it's just that fuel that gets being put on the train engine that's just, that's the real problem.
I hear what you're saying, and obviously it is linked to COVID to some degree, but the rising cost of living is only going to compound the issue, isn't it, really? People are just going to fall way behind in big numbers from here. And I live in the city myself, so I can echo exactly what you're talking about. The type of people that are living rough now and the numbers of them has risen dramatically in the last 12 months, and you can see it. You can see it in front of your eyes. I should have said this a little bit earlier, but and I haven't asked for your permission. But if there are questions, are you okay if people turn their mic on and ask them, or put them in the chat box? I've got Gemma in our studio. She may be able to ask those questions in the chat box for you, make it a bit easier for you. So if we have any, we'll let you know.
There is one there.
Okay, well, you can see it already.
Do we want to answer that one now, or do we want to delete that?
Go for it now. Yeah, please.
Cool. Thank you. You're absolutely right. It is an extremely complex problem. So the question is, I don't know if people can see it, this is a very complex problem that you are trying to solve. How do you intend on scaling to reach more people fast? The challenge for us with scaling fast is the fact that COVID has very much disrupted our growth plans, and we don't actually know how our concept relates to what is going to be a new non-COVID world. So we launched our first permanent restaurant in November 2019. As you'll know, COVID came in March 2020 and completely changed the world. So we are very cautious about growth because we don't actually know exactly how our concept works in a non-COVID world. So we need to be really careful that we don't go and spend a whole lot of money that's been, donated to us and hard-earned, etc. And we also need to make sure that our concept or our kaupapa is delivering in a world that is so dynamic right now. So what we do is we bring communities together. We are about bringing strangers together and sitting them on the same table. Now that's, if you rung up anyone giving advice about what we should do with COVID, they'll say that's the last thing that we want you to be doing. And we don't know how much longer we're going to be in this sort of world. So we do need to be really cautious. The good thing is we have, a relatively proven model. We've got a brand that people recognize. We've got a strong following of volunteers. And we have a lot of systems and procedures in place that can be rolled out in the same way that, not to the same extent, but, McDonald's or something have their operational capacity, which is really good. So, money is the biggest thing. If we had a huge amount of money, we would be able to roll out more restaurants and we would probably be less concerned with the risk. But we're a charity, we've raised money, we need to be really careful about how we spend it and when we spend it. So there's another one. So do you see a pivot coming to your model or approach? I don't. I really believe in our concept. Our concept is really unique. We are very much about building community, breaking down social barriers, and we have been able to achieve that even in a COVID environment. And I don't want to become just another organization handing out food, because I do believe that what Everybody Eats is doing is more than a Band-Aid solution. I think that it's a real difference between handing out a food parcel and inviting someone to a table and allowing them to be served by a volunteer and sit opposite someone. That's when I see that train slowing down. You know, that's when I see those people getting support from their community to find their way into employment or whatever. And all of these stories that I've experienced from Everybody Eats that I know that come from that magic of sharing food around a table. So, you know, look, we've pivoted, we've done different things. We've worked with them at in South Auckland to get food to people in critical need, because that's part of our expertise. But I don't want to fundamentally change our concept, because I really, really believe in it.
Nick, I'm sitting here listening to you thinking, you know, COVID has done some horrible things to us. I'm thinking mentally now, and a little bit of it is that isolation, that you know, tearing people apart a bit, and I love the concept of feeding people at a table and people being able to communicate again and connect again. You know, I think you're doing an amazing job in that area, and I don't think we truly know, and we'll probably look back in time and say something or comment more about it. But I don't think the impact on mental health has been truly measured yet, and so I just love the concept that you're offering here, because yes, you know, going back to your description of dignity and communication, I think is fantastic. So yeah, well done. Can I?
I'd hope that that actually our concept becomes more relevant because of exactly what you've explained. So people have been affected, their mental health has been affected through isolation and separation. And actually what we're offering is, you know, like, where else do you go out for dinner and you are expected to sit next to a stranger? It's very uncommon, if not non-existent in this country. So hopefully what we're doing becomes more relevant, probably more scary for people right now, but hopefully it will have more of an impact.
Yeah, right. Can I change course slightly? It's still about you and your organisation, but I want to talk about waste. You know, to me, you know, this was biting or eating away at me way before COVID came along, and I just love the concept of how you guys are taking a lot of that waste now and using it. But let's talk a little bit about the volume first. Can we talk a little bit about how much wastage there is in just, let's keep it in New Zealand, how much wastage in food goes on here every year? Is there sort of data around that, or?
Yeah, there is. There's not a lot of really, really recent data, but basically the story goes, humans waste around a third of the food that we produce for our own species to consume. In some developed countries like the US, where they have, you know, large portions, buffets, things like that, that can be 50%. Wow. In other countries, it can be much lower. But basically, if I can speak more on a global scale and let you know that New Zealand is pretty much on par with most developed countries in terms of our food waste. So if global food waste was a country, it would be the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases after the US and China. So This is a huge environmental problem. And if you also consider the amount of inputs that goes into producing food, fossil fuels, our food system is based around fossil fuels, unfortunately, for the most part, labor, transport, you start to realize the scale of the problem we have. So yeah, it's a huge environmental problem. In New Zealand, yeah, it's around a third. A lot of it does happen in the household. The business world has done a good job in the last 10 years since food rescue. So charities like Kibosh and Kiwi Harvest have made, and also legislation change. So the Food Act 2014 has a clause in it which we call the Good Samaritan clause, which says that if food is fit for human consumption at the time of donation, it is you're exempt. The person donating that food or the organisation is exempt from any liability, basically. So this is what's stopped dumpster diving and things like that, and supermarkets chucking blue dye all over their food when they throw it away, because they can now legally donate it and not worry about it. So we are doing great things around it. but yeah, it is a massive problem. And when you start to hear those sorts of stats, and you probably start to understand why someone like myself, who is very keen to work within food to do something positive, why I've chosen this as the concept.
Yeah, it certainly marries well. You know, I've got a farming background as well, and you know, I guess it hurts me to see so much of the good produce actually just being thrown away and dumped when it wasn't even, you know, it was never planned to be that way. And I think the challenge is not for just people like yourself to be able to gather that in and turn it into good food, but I think there's got to be some better structure within in the links between farming, retail, or distribution, and then the consumer. It just doesn't sit well for me, to be honest. So you talk about individual waste and in households. Are you able to comment a little bit around that? How maybe people can be doing a bit better around that? Because maybe some of the people involved in the webinar would like to know what they could do to help.
Yeah. I get asked this question all the time, and I think there are a few things that I really like. I think there's a couple. My two sort of biggest tips for people that are trying to reduce their waste at home or trying to do the right thing with their waste is to use your freezer. Freezers are amazing. There are some awesome social media accounts that tell you what sort of awesome things you can do with your freezer. I religiously put food in my freezer. The other thing is compost. Food waste causes problems environmentally when it goes to landfill because it becomes it breaks down without oxygen, and it releases greenhouse gases, really harmful ones like methane, not just CO2, so 20 times more potent than CO2. If you can compost at home, then you really should. It's really simple. You basically, I just have a big container, I put my food in it. I'm lucky to live in an apartment building where they have wheelie compost bins, but around various workplaces and things have compost bins now. And while it's not solving the waste problem, it's at least doing the right thing with the food waste, and it's diverting it towards actually growing more food, because that's what compost is used for. But I mean, look, I think people, it just needs to be something that you care about. And some people just don't care about waste, and they care about other things. They might drive an electric car, but be comfortable wasting food, or they might not like to get on airplanes. So I think it is really dependent on the individual. I think hearing those stats, I think working with food and going and seeing how farms work will make you far more appreciative of what you're throwing away. I really encourage people to learn to grow food. You're certainly not going to throw away a tomato if you grew it yourself, in the same way that you're not going to throw away the beanie that your grandma or your mother or your daughter or whoever knitted you, because you know where it came from. And part of the problem we have in the food system, and why I believe we're capable, especially in the West, of wasting huge amounts of food, is because we're so disconnected from where it came from. In the same way that I'm completely disconnected from where this t-shirt was made and the cotton that it's made from, and why I am shamefully happy when the time is right for me to throw it in the bin. And when you can get, you know, meat in a styrofoam tray wrapped in plastic, and you've got no idea where it came from, it becomes far, far easier than throwing it away. Than the farmer who got to know the cow, who sent it to the meat works, who, you know, like, it's just, we're disconnected in so many ways. And that's why even with humans, we're capable of doing indirectly unfortunate things to other people if we don't know them. And that's why I love the idea of people getting to know each other better, so that we can make better decisions for everyone, not just ourselves.
Yeah. No. Well said, mate. Hey, I see that you've got involved in a little project called Goody Box. Do you want to talk about that? And because I think it's quite linked to what we've just spoken about. So
yeah, would love to. So we've launched at the worst possible time in history a campaign called Goody Box. So we are basically championing the restaurant Doggy Bag. So we've teamed up with Innocent Packaging, which is a compostable packaging company, and created a little box, which is really beautiful, that restaurants can purchase for cheaper than they'd purchase the equivalent unbranded box, which we encourage them to give to people to use as doggy bags. I think it's something like 97% of Kiwis would like to be offered a doggy bag when they have too much food in a restaurant, but something like 6% of them have ever been offered one. For some reason in this country in the last 20 years, there has become this massive stigma around using a doggy bag. It's like this thing which, oh, I'm really petty, I'm poor if I use a doggy bag, I need the leftovers, which is the most ridiculous thing in the world, because we've gone out to often an expensive restaurant, we've overindulged, and by throwing that food in the bin, we're disrespecting the chef that made it for us, and we're creating a problem. So in a lot of restaurants now, you can go, you'll be offered what we call a goody box. You can make an optional donation to Everybody Eats by scanning a QR code. The suggested donation is $5, which allows us to produce an extra 3-course meal for someone in need. So the whole idea is in that moment of having too much, which I assume with the people on the webinar, they've experienced in a restaurant at some stage in their lives. They've been lucky enough to go to a restaurant and overindulge. We ask people to think about those with too little. And we ask people to actually respect that food, take it home, put it in the fridge, and eat it the next day. And wear that beautiful box that we've created as a badge, as a trophy to say, I'm doing the right thing with this food. I'm not going to sneak the little tinfoil wrap up under my t-shirt and feel bad for eating the food that I paid for, and the chef went out of their way to make delicious for me. So it's been really unfortunate when we launched it. We've got sort of about 100 restaurants signed up, a lot of top restaurants, which is really cool. But just really unfortunate timing with COVID and its impact on restaurants, and also its impact on supply chain. We weren't actually able to, we sold out of them within weeks, and we weren't able to provide them because they unfortunately come from China, and China wasn't very good at supplying the world with all the things China supplies the world with. But I would suggest if you're in a restaurant and they don't offer you a doggy bag, ask them if they have a goody box. And if they say, what's that? You say, it's a doggy bag that supports a charity called Everybody Eats.
Yeah. I'll definitely be doing that, mate. We often ask for doggy bags, so we're big users of that. So I'd have to say, I think once we do get a little bit more back to the new norm, I think you'll be right. I think that'll take off big time. Congratulations on that concept. I think you've got a couple of questions there. I think I saw popped up. So if you want to.
Sure. Have you thought about partnering with small business retailers? Absolutely. We work with anyone who wants to, we'll talk to anyone who wants to donate food. We work with raw ingredients rather than restaurant ingredients for food safety reasons and for volume reasons. So yes, we do have a number of relationships with smaller businesses that don't have massive volumes of food. So the answer to that is yes, we're really collaborative. We work with all sorts of different people. And the next one is, would you give some more insight into ecological footprint? I'm not quite sure what that means. Are you referring to the impact of food waste from an ecological perspective?
Yes.
Yes. So I get, yeah, the ecological footprint of food waste. I think that, as far as I'm aware, that, food waste obviously ends up in landfill, which takes up a lot of space. But aside from that, the ecological impact is in terms of climate change, so greenhouse gases. I don't have to hand any numbers around exactly how much energy and resource goes into producing the food that is wasted, but I have certainly read them in the past, and I know that it is vast and as worth considering as the ecological impact from the greenhouse gases created from food waste.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Hey, Are you, or is the organisation looking for volunteers? Do you need more people to help you?
We are desperate for volunteers, and there's a number of reasons for that. We've based our whole organisation around volunteers. We've been extremely lucky, and we do have a huge number of volunteers. But you know, when you operate a restaurant 5 days a week, like we do in Onehunga, or 3 days a week in Wellington, we do need a lot of people. So yes is the answer. We would love more volunteers. We love working with businesses who come and bring their team and who come relatively regularly. We have various different businesses and small businesses and big businesses that do that. So if there are people listening and you're in Auckland or Wellington, we'd love for you to get involved. It's really, really easy. It takes not a lot of time to sign up. You can come as often or as little as you like. You don't need any experience in hospitality. And there's a job for everyone. So yeah, we'd really encourage people to sign up. You can do that on our website, which is everybodyeats.nz. You can click get involved and just give it a go. A lot of people are a little bit nervous about their first volunteer shift, and we just remind them that there are over 5,000 people who have been in exactly the same position as you, and the majority of those people have returned for a second shift, which suggests that they enjoyed it and they got something out of it.
Yeah. Well, I think the challenge goes out to Austar and my team that we need to seriously dig in and give you a hand here. So we'll definitely be working on that for you, Nick.
Thank you.
What I guess my last question would be: so where to from here for Everybody Eats? What's your next big challenge with it? Is it just growing it, or is there other things on the horizon for you?
I think it's consolidation after I'm going to say after COVID.
Yeah.
We need to kind of get back to doing what we do in whatever this new world looks like. We've got a number of growth opportunities in Auckland, so we'd really like to add another permanent restaurant in Auckland within the next 6 months. And then I think use that as to educate the next decision. You know, the last restaurant we launched was in Wellington, and it's operating 3 days a week, and that was in COVID. So we'd like to do another one sort of outside of COVID, learn some lessons, and then really make the growth plans from there. But we don't, as I said before, like we don't want to change what we're doing. We'll adapt what we're doing. We don't want to drastically change what we're doing. We're really comfortable with the concept. People seem to get it. People seem to like it. So yeah, as you say, it really is just about growth for us.
Okay. And I think you've done so well, mate. You've got through those questions. I think it's just time to say thank you and really appreciated you giving up your time. I know you're a busy man, but more importantly, we just love the concept that you've developed, and really keen to see it, or to help you grow it and develop it. So yeah, all the best with it, and thanks very, very much on behalf of all the listeners, but also on behalf of the Austar team.
Cool. Thank you for having me. Absolute pleasure. Hope to see you in the restaurant as a diner or a volunteer at some stage soon.
Okay.